All right, we've wasted this man's time enough here. Evan Giddings joins us right now. He's the host of the 415ers podcast that covers the San Francisco 49ers. Give him a follow. eGiddings10 on Twitter. Evan, thanks so much for putting up with that, man. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Look, you're talking about how social media may or may not wreck lives, and how to be a sports commenter, you got to get a lot of time in, got to put time in. Well, right now I'm getting set to do a basketball game right after I hop off this interview. Just came over from work over in San Francisco. So we're running 12-hour shifts. It's just the way it is.
Do you have like a signature call? Like, do you hit him with a Marv Albert, like, yes? Or like, yeah, like a little Dickie V, like, he's awesome, baby. He's a PT player.
We're still working on one. I'd like to think those come pretty organically. But, as far as home run calls, baseball, I mean, pretty much kiss it goodbye, tell it goodbye. That's not mine. It's one that I tend to favor or trend towards. But we're still working on the original one.
All right, well, I've already trademarked. You can ask your question in a second. I've already trademarked GTFOH. That's my home run call, so don't steal that. What do you got over there, Greg?
Question for you, Evan. So I'm looking at just your followers, and I was just wondering how close you and Tracy McGrady have gotten. It looks like he follows you on Twitter. See if,
I think Tracy McGrady also follows a few other thousand people. But, Tracy McGrady is my most popular fan. I will certainly take it. I'm a big fan of his. And, appreciate it. Shout out to Tracy McGrady, so appreciate it.
So let's talk a little bit about Brock Purdy, because I was for a couple of years, Matt Campbell, Iowa State fan. And Purdy, those first 2 years, man, he looked like a pro-style quarterback. And then he kind of dropped off a little bit, but the teams weren't great. They really couldn't stay healthy. He's going into this game against Dallas, and this is a huge step up in class as far as the defense that he's going to see from that Seattle secondary. Do you think he can make all the plays? Because I think that Dallas might be able to shut down the run, and I think this is going to be a big game for Brock Purdy. If he has to drop back 38, 40 times. I know we've seen that, comeback win against the Raiders. You think he's capable of doing that? Do you believe in Purdy?
I do believe in Purdy, but I believe in Purdy because of what you mentioned Dallas might be able to neutralize, which is the run game. And we saw first half against Seattle and throw it 19 times. Didn't look as comfortable as he did in the second half after Kyle Shanahan got back to the ground and pound and really crushed Seattle to open up that first half, or the first drive of the second half. Brock Purdy's a guy to me that you're still kind of waiting for him to show you he doesn't belong, and yet he's giving you nothing so far to believe that. And to put up 30-plus points in his last 7 games, I mean, it's been unbelievable to watch this kid come out of virtually nowhere and transform this 49ers offense, along, of course, with a lot of help from Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. But it's difficult to me imagining a team being able to stop San Francisco effectively running the football for 60 minutes. And once they get to that 4 to 5 carry mark per play, I think Brock Purdy is allowed to have a little more time in the pocket, and that's when you see him tend to destroy teams. Last week against Seattle, he had about 3.8 yards or 3.8 seconds until his pass. And for me, if he's getting that much time back there, there's not a lot that can be done, because eventually someone's going to find their way open, and Brock Purdy so far has demonstrated he can hit them.
Well, I was looking here at just the rushing yard numbers for Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette. Rachaad White, 7 carries, 41 yards. Leonard Fournette didn't do much on the ground, 5 carries for 11 yards, 2.2 a pop. Do you think, considering that the Niners really haven't faced a defense like Dallas and a pass rusher like Micah Parsons, that he's going to have that much time? And if he doesn't have much time, how do you think they adjust that game plan?
Well, I think it starts with number 23. I think it starts with Christian McCaffrey. And look, against Seattle, Week 15 on Thursday night, I think we saw a glimpse into what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, which is give Christian McCaffrey the ball 15 times in the first half and let that dictate the rest of the game. So as far as the pass rush for Dallas, you're right. Brock Purdy has not faced anything like it. And if he's lucky enough to get past Dallas, he's probably looking at a Philadelphia team that has more sacks this season than Dallas. So he's got a lot in front of him. But I think Brock Purdy's also demonstrated that he can evade pass rushes in a way that, simply put, we haven't seen from a San Francisco quarterback in quite some time. So for him to especially extend plays, he can get in trouble sometimes with how confident I think he is in his ability to evade and to create time in the pocket. But once he gets outside, and if he makes the first man miss, then you're looking at Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, McCaffrey, Juszczyk. We saw Elijah Mitchell break out of the backfield. There's a lot of players that can make plays after the catch. And so if Brock Purdy can make one person miss, I'm not saying it's going to be easy to do against Micah Parsons and that Dallas defense, but if he can, it's going to be a long day for the Cowboys.
So I was listening to the Richard Sherman podcast, and he was kind of talking about Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan and how Shanahan kind of broke Dan Quinn's defense. But you go back to the first meeting that they had in 2019, and actually, man, Quinn kind of shut down the 49ers offense that week. And then the same thing really in that playoff game. I know San Francisco beat Dallas, but Dallas actually had some success defensively. Is that as big of a mismatch as a lot of people are going to talk about? You know, Dan Quinn, I know he's not a great head coach, but he's a pretty good coordinator. And like, who do you give the advantage to since they know each other so well? Do you think Kyle gets him? Maybe he's got a couple wrinkles up his sleeve this week?
I think both, it's a fair point. Both are very familiar with each other, of course, even going back to Atlanta when they both, were in the Super Bowl together. Dan Quinn is head coach, Kyle Shanahan is offensive coordinator. So they're very familiar with each other. I do give the advantage slightly to Shanahan just because I think there's not as much tape on this iteration of San Francisco's offense as there is on Dallas's defense. And if you're saying that the Cowboys are simply stuck in their ways and they want to, apply pressure and dial things up the way we saw them do constantly against Tom Brady on Monday night, I would say that San Francisco may have more difficulty with it, but we've also seen them be able to handle a stout defensive line in Washington, who they put 37 points up against. The issue is, of course, Washington doesn't have the type of offense that the Dallas Cowboys do, which is averaging close to 30 points for this season and has been the number one team in the red zone, turning those opportunities into touchdowns. So, holding serve for Kyle Shanahan to me isn't as big of an issue as perhaps maybe the number one defense being able to keep Dak Prescott and that Cowboys offense that hung quite a few touchdowns on Tom Brady in Tampa Bay.
What concerns you the most? Like, if you go on the air, if you do the podcast on Monday and you say, Dallas won this game or San Francisco's season is over because of this, what concerns you the most, would you say, for San Francisco going into this matchup?
It may sound counterintuitive the way he played the last 7 weeks of the season, but if Dak Prescott can be the dual threat that he was against Tampa Bay, that is something that has constantly killed the Niners in the Kyle Shanahan era, but especially this season. And it was a long time ago, but week 1, Justin Fields, that's a loss. Going to week 3, Russell Wilson, who can move in the pocket, that's a loss. Marcus Mariota against Atlanta, who can run the ball, that's a loss. And of course, Patrick Mahomes, who they got ran out of the building of, before they got Christian McCaffrey, at least inserted him into the starting lineup. So if the quarterback for Dallas, being Dak Prescott, can extend plays and can pick up first downs with his legs, as well as move the ball through the air with the amount of capable weapons he has, I think that DeMeco Ryans in this defense is going to have a tall task in front of them, and it's going to be up to that offense, which has averaged about 35 over the last month and a half, to continue to do that, because Dallas can score as well. And this one, in my opinion, might turn into a shootout.
I'm looking here at some player props, and Evan, I see CMC's number is 65.5. I don't have any rushing attempts up yet because I was very curious to see what your thoughts were on that. What would you do there?
I would pound the over, because I also believe that Kyle Shanahan is going to rely on Christian McCaffrey on the ground. I know Dallas, although their defensive line is good, has been susceptible to the run this season. I think they're 22nd in yards against carries. So, Christian McCaffrey is going to have some chances, I think, to break out. And Kyle Shanahan is going to need him to, in my opinion, if Brock Purdy is going to get comfortable back there in the pocket. So everything starts with 23, and I think that Kyle Shanahan was able to maybe not use CMC as much as he'd like, or as much as he needed to in the second half against Seattle. So he'll be a little more well-rested. Also have the 2-day rest advantage over Dallas. And so if you're telling me 63.5 yards is Christian McCaffrey's prop, I would say give me the over, because I also think whatever that attempt total is going to be is also going to be over.
I know there's obviously still a playoff run here, but who do you think the starting quarterback is week 1? I'm guessing it's not going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, but is it going to be Trey Lance, who, obviously you move up in the draft for, or do you think it is going to be Purdy?
Or maybe someone else.
Or maybe someone else, maybe a 46-year-old Tom. Yeah, no, I'm just
Yeah.
I think right now it's Brock Purdy's job to lose. I mean, and that's, at this point, very hard to foresee, the way that Trey Lance, unfortunately, because of injury, hasn't had much opportunity to change people's minds. And each and every game that Brock Purdy wins, which he has only done so far, makes it all the more likely that Trey Lance is the definitive QB2. That was a topic of conversation here in San Francisco a lot this week because people were floating the idea, do you listen to trade offers if someone comes down your road and asks for Trey Lance? You got your quarterback of the future perhaps in Brock Purdy. Obviously, it all depends on how the season finishes and how the season looks. But for right now, I feel like it'd be hard to find a person in the greater Bay Area that would tell you that Trey Lance would be QB1 at this point over Brock Purdy.
Evan, why hasn't Kyle Shanahan won Coach of the Year yet?
Kyle Shanahan, he's stuck in that weird space. This is a great question. And on the 4 and Fivers, we kind of went through it this week. I think that if you evaluate, your Coach of the Year candidacy based on best team, best record, well, then it would kind of trend towards Nick Sirianni, right? But if you're looking at a head coach that has done the most with the least, then maybe you're trending towards a Brian Dable or a Doug Peterson or even a Pete Carroll in the same division. It wasn't expected a whole lot of this year. So Kyle Shanahan, kind of by his own creation, because of course he's what he doubles as far as front office and head coaching duties. He's at the forefront of the Christian McCaffrey deal and bringing him in. He has created such a juggernaut of a roster that I think people in some ways hold that against him as a head coach because, right, you should be winning 13 games if you have the best weapons in football and you have the number one defense. So I think he's kind of stuck in that limbo of he probably should be head coach of the year, just on paper, based on having gone through 2 starting quarterbacks. But then again, each quarterback has been better than the last. So did he start the right guy? Did he not? I don't know how the writers are going to view Kyle Shanahan in the end, but I think your answer lies somewhere in there.
So I'm curious really about this last thing. We have about 45 seconds. Do you think Kyle Shanahan wants a quarterback who is a system quarterback, or would he want someone as dynamic as an Aaron Rodgers or an elder statesman that, really wants to have control at the line of scrimmage?
I think that he wants someone kind of like Brock Purdy who does enough dynamic things with his legs to be able to extend plays, create things that he cannot himself dial up. I do not think he wants someone that is going to overshadow him when it comes to calling the offense. So he would take a talent like Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he would take an attitude like Aaron Rodgers. So Brock Purdy fits in perfectly for what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. And I think moving forward, that's going to be the type of quarterback that we see generally in San Francisco or wherever Kyle Shanahan is the head coach.
Evan, 30 seconds. Who do you got coming out of the NFC? Is it San Francisco? Is it Philadelphia? The Giants? Who do you like?
Obviously, a lot lies on this weekend. I do have to see how Jalen Hurts looks for Philadelphia. I am slightly leaning towards the Eagles just because I believe that they have what San Francisco has not seen yet, which is a complete and whole defense along with a complete offense. But San Francisco is playing the best football of any team right now in the NFL. The one thing that I haven't seen from them would be against a team like Dallas that can get to the quarterback, Brock Purdy be able to overcome that. I think Philly is going to host San Francisco in the NFC title game. I think it's going to be a field goal game, and I think Philadelphia walks out to the Super Bowl.
Evan, thanks so much, man. Check out the podcast, the 415ers. Evan Giddings on Twitter, Evan Giddings 10. Thanks so much. We'll have you on again. Enjoy the game this weekend. Good luck.
Appreciate it.
BetMGM Tonight continues next. Ryan Horvath, Trista Crick, and Earl, who
made a Twitter profile. He's already starting to tweet.
Yeah, he also downloaded a virus to the company computer. Talk about the company computer. Talk about the company.